In a world filled with sharks, bears, and killer bees, one man is brave enough to stay indoors to bring you the latest in gaming, movie, and pop culture news. That man is Tom Awesome, and this is the Outside is Overrated podcast.
Hello and welcome to Outside is Overrated Game Club. Tonight we're discussing the first expansion of Diablo IV, Vessel of Hatred by Blizzard Entertainment. In this monthly standalone segment of the Outside is Overrated podcast, we play a game with our Outside is Overrated community and invite our Patreon supporters to join the discussion. If you want to join us, support Outside is Overrated on Patreon at patreon.com/OiO. You can support us for as little as $2 a month. I'm your host, Tom Sedlacek, and joining me for the discussion today are the Hobby Box, Joe Burns.
Heyo.
The Vanilla Gorilla, John Munch.
Howdy, howdy.
Dr. B, Brian Camille.
Hi.
And some guy named Casey.
Oh, what's going on, everybody?
Dr. C, Casey Aline, you're finally back. We stopped playing role-playing games, and here you are. What happened?
I mean, life gets in the way sometimes, of a good time. And, I didn't have a whole lot of time for video games, unfortunately. And still really don't, but I love Diablo, so here I am.
Yeah, well, you told me personally, privately, offline, that you hate Joey, and so now I'm just putting that out in the ether. So, how is it reconciling your hatred for Joey with your love for Diablo IV?
I mean, this is Vessel of Hatred, right? So, I mean, I'm just taking everything out, my hatred of Joey on this game, and just smashing minions and burning through dungeons. That's how I manage.
I'm so glad we can give you that outlet.
I was gonna say it's fitting because right now we're looking up at Brian like we're his Vessel of Hatred too. So it all works.
Yeah, and here's the real reason why you should be a Patreon supporter of OiO. So you can jump onto the freaking Discord here and look at Brian. What exactly are you recording on a laptop, on a phone? Because it is literally like my wife is writing me. That is the optics that I have of you right now, Brian. I see your upper chest and your face, and you have one hand up on top of your head. What is going on here, dude?
He's frozen that way.
Oh, well, he's frozen that way in my memory, too. Well, that'll be our eternal lasting image of Brian. Let's do a quick print screen of that so that we can keep it forever.
I do find it funny that you went to comparing Brian to your wife right there.
Fine.
Right?
You guys are just filthy.
Well,
Filthy people.
Brian's going to go turn off all the streaming devices in his house.
That's the problem here. I'm just relaxing, looking at my window.
Is he looking at his wingdings?
No, this isn't my internet, right? Can you guys understand what the frick Brian is saying?
No. It was delayed. I think it came through a minute after he said it too.
Well, Brian, why don't you just do us a favor? Just take your
Can
shirt off.
you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, now we can.
Thank God. I was just saying, I'm just enjoying my guillotine win. I'm looking at Casey in a distant second. Ooh, that's just got to be painful.
1 point, 2 points, or did Nico Collins just go nuts?
Oh no, dude. You're still back by a solid 5, Casey.
Yeah, so we put Brian on the defensive and he has to throw shade at somebody else. All right, great. So let's set some expectations for what we're going to talk about tonight. We are going to talk about what's new with the Diablo IV expansion, the Vessel of Hatred. And we're going to talk about what's new with the new season of content, the Season of Hatred. Both the new season and the expansion both released on October 7th, 2024. Excuse me. The core gameplay loop of Diablo IV remains the same. You kill monsters, you level up, and you grab the loot, right? So the expansion costs $30, and you get a new class, a new region, more story content, mercenaries, and a new co-op player versus environment endgame dungeon. We'll start with the new class, the Spiritborn. It feels like a cross between a druid and a monk. The Spiritborn channel spirit guardians to increase their mobility and melt their foes. You can mix and match the awesome power of the fire-based jaguar, the earth-based gorilla, the poison-based centipede, or the wind-based bird thing. Casey, you have all these awesome new options to build your own master class, and you go back to playing a necromancer. Can you appreciate that you are a flawed human being, my friend?
Actually, I played a mage, Tom, not a necromancer. But I do miss my necromancer. But I made the decision to play a mage when we were getting back into it because I'd never played one before, and now I realize I'd never played a Spiritborn before either. But I just kind of made up my mind, so I rolled with it, and I do kind of wish that I'd played a Spiritborn because as I was playing the main story, a lot of the story kind of lines up with that class specifically to a point where I actually stopped playing the main story, and I had every intention of going back and creating a Spiritborn and playing through the story with that character because I just think it makes a lot more sense. So I didn't get real far into the story. I don't know, I'm probably just a couple hours in, but I do love the mage that I created. I mean, so far I'm just still on the level build, but man, the firewall mage that I created is just so fun to go in and just melt everything in the dungeons or on the open world. It's a really, really fun build.
And the fire effects look awesome. I played a fire mage in one of the seasons, and it is really cool. Burnsy, you also hated the Spiritborn with a burning fiery passion. So what did you play as this season, this expansion, this discussion?
Yeah, no, so I started with the Spiritborn, and I got it to level 15, which I know isn't enough time, but it just wasn't jiving with me. So then I jumped into an old barbarian that I wanted to try again.
Would you say that the Spiritborn didn't jive with you because you hate fun, or is there another reason?
It just, I don't know, I guess it seems like it's one of those classes, and I know a lot of classes are can be like this, where you need a lot more of the kit in order to feel like you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so for me, it just, I was doing the centipede path, the poison path. And I don't know, it just didn't feel like I was effectively killing things most of the time. And I just had to sit there. I don't know, it didn't grab me as being interesting to play at that point.
Well, it's because you chose freaking centipede, dude. Centipedes are dumb. Jaguars are awesome. You just chose the wrong path. So respec, go back to your Spiritborn, and it's great. What kind of a rogue did you make? What was your specialty with roguing?
Yeah, so I just did the cutthroat skills. So it was really just stabbing very fast, and then sticking your blades and things and pulling them back at you, and just moving around a lot, and that's basically the route that I went on. Kind of, about halfway through leveling, I ended up getting an ability. It wasn't an ability I had, it was an ability from an item that when I would hit it a couple of times, it would freeze them. And so basically that ended up being my build, even though it's not an actual part of my kit, really. You get some of the imbuement stuff, but that never really feels like it does a ton of the actual, freezing, at least as much as I put into it. And so that kind of ended up being my build, was just stab things as fast as possible, hopefully get some crits, and then freeze stuff to just destroy it really quickly, and then bounce to the next guy. I also have a lot of, percentages up for my ultimate. And so it's really just, getting through the 40 seconds between ultimates to then just really destroy stuff, pull that out when I need to, and that's about it.
Hey Tom. Guess whose build doesn't use an ultimate again?
What is wrong with you, dude? Okay, Casey, you played Diablo IV wrong, and you get a pass because you haven't played any video games. Okay, that's fine. So Casey and Joey both decided to take inferior builds. That's their choice. Enjoy the game however you want to, right? So, you guys can do whatever you want, and as long as you're having fun, God bless you. Games are games, right? So, Bry Guy, now I'm going to try to summarize your experience as I'm aware of it here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on your Diablo experience. You bought the game at launch. You played the crap out of it. You bounced off it hard. You came back once, briefly, when we did our first game club. You're like, this still sucks. season, I think 4 released the season before this one came out, and you're like, oh, this is fun again. And you went down a deep rabbit hole, and now you're hundreds of hours in on just your Spiritborn character. Maybe you're hundreds of levels in. So, like, what is your experience playing as Spiritborn? And did I accurately summarize your experience with D4 so far?
Yeah, I don't think it's hundreds of hours, but it's definitely substantial. And it was so weird because early in Diablo 4's release cycle, they were running into problems that they had essentially fixed in D3, and yet here we are in D4, and they were running into some of the same issues that they had already solved. But I think they had this weird kind of dichotomy they had to figure out, and this may be a better question for John to throw in here. There is a substantial difference between D2 and D3. Is that accurate, Munch?
Yeah,
yes.
Especially at launch. Massive.
Yeah, because that D2 remastered, I think they were trying to find that sweet spot between D3 and D2, and D4 is kind of like that hybrid. But the fun things about D4 is more related to 3, and now the farther we get away from 3, people could admit that that was a fun game. So it's been a ton of fun since they really revamped the aspect system, the weapon system. A lot of things had to get kind of fixed, which it took them almost a year to do. Joe, in your defense, I started with the Centipede build, and like it sucked. I think it had a lot to do with the build you were playing, because Kelsey has been using a Quill Volley build since the beginning, and she's just melted it. It's super fun.
Also, don't swear, Brian. I don't edit this.
Right. Okay, I'll be better. It was such a build, that poison build, because it never felt like you were doing anything. So the Spiritborn right now are completely broken, which I think is perfectly appropriate because, again, they're kind of like they are the big piece that's coming out with the DLC of the new class. You want to show both the new class. Like, all of their builds are like S+. They're so far beyond anything else. It is really hard to play anything else in this particular moment. But because they made them so wildly powerful, there's a bunch of different builds that you can do. So I'm doing a Crushing Hand build, which is essentially AoE attacks. Like, you're like a monkey with a cymbal just clamping. You're just blowing things up all over all the time. I'm a level 60. I'm like 220, I think, paragons, or 223. And there's some ways you can speed up leveling. I'll talk about that later. But it's like I'm running through pits up to almost level 90, 91, 92. Those are the first ones that are actually killing me and slowing me down. Kelsey's doing a Quill Volley, which is completely the most broken build in the game. Like, she literally has hit bosses for 1 billion damage with a B. So, like, Duriel's there. He is like, he's in his gaping crevasse, which is just like the greatest name for a dungeon frickin' ever. Welcome to the gaping crevasse. We call it the Solachik. And he's there, and then he's dead. Like, he's just gone. She'll crit, and he's toast. So it's been wildly fun to play as the Spiritborn. It's clearly going to get nerfed into the dirt because it has to. Like, it just has to. But I've been enjoying it because it is such a kind of a weird hybrid-like feel. It feels different than everything else, and that's really important considering that there's so few classes. It sucks when they kind of feel the same, but it's carving its own kind of thing.
John, you're also playing as Spiritborn. Do you believe that Brian is right, that it's completely overpowered and broken?
Oh, it's OP, and that's by design, right? I mean, hey, it's the new hotness, right? You always make the thing everyone is playing, like I think the point Joey's making about like the Centipede build, right? If you don't feel like you are like destroying everything, right? It's boring and you don't want to play it, right? That's not why you play Diablo. You play Diablo to see lots of big numbers and explosions. Now, everybody here is playing Centipede wrong because I play a Centipede build and it's flipping awesome. Because all I do is like throw on like my armor spell that like basically when someone hits me, they just die. So I love the fact that I'm just like walking around and there's a bunch of enemies and I just throw on my gorilla armor thing and like boom, everybody just dies because of the thorns I have going and like the massive damage from pestilence and stinger, right? The problem with the build though is if you don't go get your aspects right away, it does suck, right? So you do have that like I'm not doing anything. Well, yeah, because you need to have a couple key aspects first and grab those. And hey, if you get luck of the roll and you get some good legendaries right out the gate, awesome. Otherwise, you just got to kind of know, hey, I got to go drop into Dungeon A and Dungeon B to grab the Infestation and the Pestilence aspects. And as soon as you have those, you are just mowing enemies down left and right.
So, John, did you have to look that up, like, online to find out which aspects you need to make the Centipede a viable build, or did you just, like, look at the aspects on the map and figure out, this is what's going to really help me poison and thorn things into oblivion?
Oh, I'm lazy. I looked it up. Like, there's nerds that are doing this, like, look, like, why am I going to, like, I don't find enjoyment in, like, going through and learning and looking at all the skills and figuring out, okay, if I take this skill and mix it with this aspect, that's not where I enjoy. I say, oh, what are all the best builds right now and which one sounds the funnest? And I'm going to pull that up and do that. Like, if Diablo gave me the option to say, do this build and just, like, let it go do the skill tree for that sort of build, I would do it, right? Because that to me is like why I'm like, okay, and then tweak it and make little modifications as necessary.
So Casey was shaking his head there, yes, in agreement to the grab the most OP build that you can out of the gate. Brian, I think you also wanted to make a point.
I had the Stinger Pestilence going, and maybe the problem was I'm playing with Kelsey, and you can start the Quill Volley build, which again we said the most overpowered of all classes in the game. And she was mowing down everything so exceedingly fast that I would have to concentrate on an enemy for a little bit to build up my pestilence swarms. And it just felt so slow by comparison. Maybe that's what it was. And it took, because I was like, oh yeah, a melee like poison build, this will be fun. And it wasn't compared to what she was doing. But the problem I think is that she was essentially nuking the screen so fast. I never got a chance to feel like I was doing anything.
And I did run into some points where actually, like, so I'm running on, the way I play Diablo is as soon as, like, the enemies are way too easy and I'm not doing anything and not having to think, I tweak the difficulty, right? And I start to ramp it up because I'm like, okay, I want to be a little more challenging so I level faster and get better gear, right? And get into that loop so I can get to Torment and get to the end stuff faster, right? But I did have a couple, like, boss fights where, like, I had just gotten some new gear, didn't have my aspects set, and it was like, oh, I gotta really, like, dodge and play this right because I was relying on, like, my ultimate to, like, do most of my damage. So it's a build that you can get yourself in trouble with if you don't drop your aspects correctly after you gear up again. You got to spend a little time to say, oh, okay, I have a new piece of X, and now, because that's my loop, right? Oh, this like, get all my gear set with the aspect I want, and then I go and I just keep getting new gear and say, oh, here, this spear or polearm's better than the one I have. Roll the new aspect on it, cash it in, and be done.
That centipede, by the way, is just dope.
It just
this
looks
gigantic
awesome.
Centipede comes out, barfs like poison on everything. It is remarkably sweet. Some of those ultimates.
It's so fun to, like,
we do.
watch the centipede jump out, and then, like, and what I tend to do is I throw the because you do two moves with the centipede. One, like, makes everything scatter away from you and poisons everything, and then your ultimate comes out. Yep. Yeah, and when you do the ultimate, it actually, anything that's poisoned, it just basically executes them. So you're like, I'm going to poison everything, make it run away, and then it's kind of like, oh, watch all these, like, little peons run away, and then I pull my ultimate, and they all just drop dead. I'm like, ha, that was fun.
That does sound fun, but I'd like to correct you here, John. You and Brian and Kelsey and Joey and everyone else who is playing the Spiritborn anywhere but the Path of the Jaguar is just wrong. I really enjoyed playing a Spiritborn. I followed the Path of the Jaguar, and my build centered on firing off my ultimate as quickly as possible. So there's a passive that you can take that, I think it's a passive, or maybe it's a mod to the ultimate. But basically, every time I kill something with my ultimate on the screen, it gives me a chance to fire off my ultimate again. Now, the Jaguar ultimate is relatively short. It jumps on, it does a whirlwind, it hits everything around you, and it's sweet. And my build was firing it off 4 times in a row, then I'd have a 30-second cooldown until I could hit it again.
So, just so I'm hearing you right, you're basically building your build like to shoot your ultimate as quick as possible,
again,
right?
and again and again, like
again and again and again and again. Okay, just I'm like, not that I'm like projecting anything on anywhere else, but just saying, hey.
I have never been afraid to shoot my shot, John. Like,
there you go.
Never ever. Like, you should play with me. I'll shoot it all over you. It'll be great. So, here's the way that I approach Diablo 4 in general in seasonal content. When I have to start a new character, which always makes me sad because I like all the characters that I played before, but when I have to start a new character, I want to level up as much as possible. I don't look at meta builds ahead of time. I don't think too much about the builds as I'm going through it. I kind of pick things here and there, and I'm like, oh, that sounds neat. Oh, that sounds like it'll play out this well. And then once I get near level cap, and once I have a bevy of skill points to reallocate, then I'll look at a meta build. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, how can I turn this into something that actually viably works? You guys think that I'm taking the most fun approach to this game? Casey, you're smirking and you're shaking your head no.
They have leveling builds, Tom. Like, legit, like, that's what I played. I had a mage that was level 40 in about 6 hours. That's how you play. And then from there, then you can start to tweak stuff. But, like,
Casey, I have a hard time taking your advice on how to play a game, my friend.
I'm telling you, it's super fun.
And you level faster if you hold the controller like this, with like a claws around it.
Claw grip for the win.
So Casey's opposed to me. Like... Joey, John, Brian, like, which one of us do you think is on the right end of the spectrum here?
Well, I'm just going to throw out, I probably have the worst way to do a build, even worse than yours, Tom. So the way that I've approached it with the more recent characters I've created is I've basically come up with a character that I wanted to create. So my barbarian is She-Kratos, and then my whole decision point is which ability out of these 4 is more like Kratos, and then I select it. And then when I get to a new tree, which one of these is more like Kratos, and I select it. My my rogue, his name is Whack Blitto, and so then it was just like, what ability seems most like Black Widow? And then I'd do it. And then what ability seems most like Black Widow? And then I'd do it. And then I just sort of roll it that way. And that's how I do it. And then I look at like the add-on abilities that you can get like in the little like bits in between. And it's just like, oh, okay, I think this will make this stronger. This will make this stronger. When I did start the Spiritborn, let me just throw this out there. I did follow the Icy Veins build for a centipede build, which it said was one of the best leveling builds, and it just didn't jive with me. I didn't give it a lot of time, but it didn't jive with me, so I'm just gonna
Icy
throw
Veins
that
is
out
the problem. Why are you using Icy Veins? Max Roll exists. Move on. Grow up, Joe. Grow up.
So Casey's head just exploded. Joey and I are kind of on the same team here. John, I feel like you're with Casey in the pre-looking up builds. Bry Guy, you're the tiebreaker here. Who do you like better? Do you like Tom or do you like Casey?
As always, I resonate with Casey. I am going to play an efficient gameplay. I'm not going to run around.
Oh, geez, Brian, like, you just got muted. It's the weirdest thing. I don't know what happened. You just completely cut out.
Funny.
Look,
I don't know
you
what
can
happened.
have it be a hybrid, guys. Like, it can be both, right? So, like, actually take a look at the builds and say, what are the best leveling builds? And you say, what core skill sounds fun to me, right? Oh, I really want to, like... What was that?
No, it's one way or the other. That's how this world works.
No,
Black or white.
just like 4 or 5 leveling builds. Like, you might be not as efficient as you pick the best leveling build, but if, like, poisoning doesn't sound fun to you and you want to do Jaguar, then go look at the best leveling build around that core skill, right? That's the way I do it, is I say, okay, here's the class I'm going to pick because it's what I want to play this season, and I say, what are the leveling builds they have, and great, I'm going to try this one because it sounds fun, and then by the time I hit endgame, either I like that, and then I build an endgame build off of it, or I say, nope, that one sucked, and now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to this leveling build or this endgame build because I like this. I want to try this core skill because the core skill is what you're using 90% of the time until you hit endgame.
The trick with some of this, though, too, is like it is wild with how many, because now it's only up to level 60 instead of 100, and because the Paragon board is like so excessive, like to switch builds can be kind of arduous, and how it still doesn't let us save separate builds in the wardrobe makes no sense. We could do that in Diablo 3. yet they still have not allowed that in Diablo 4.
How soon in Diablo 3 could you do that, though? Like, that's the
You
question.
could do that within the first year.
Oh, okay.
I don't say
I was
Reaper
gonna say,
Souls. Reaper Souls, so like 2 years.
Okay, so we're still. I mean, we're about at that time frame now where they should be rolling that out. I mean,
but why wouldn't you just? You already did it. Why wouldn't you just do it for the next game? Why do you have to like re-release it after 2 years? Just it's already done. Just copy and paste.
Well, I would say that the actual build is a lot more complicated in Diablo 4 than it is in Diablo 3, because in Diablo 3 you're making like one of two choices at different points, basically. You know, I mean, there's not as many different permutations, whereas with Diablo 4 going back a lot more to what Diablo 2 does, you have a lot more like little dips and bobs and dips and dabs that you're filling in the sheet. There's a lot more like there's a lot more there to, I think, try to store. So it's maybe a little bit more complicated from that perspective. I don't know programming. I could be completely wrong, but it feels like that might be a little bit more complicated to try to do, especially when part of the economy is if you want to change your build, you need to spend some of your coins in order to, rejigger what you have built. So I think that's maybe part of it also, is that they want to make sure they're getting that 760 gold from you when you want to take and change this ability to this other ability. It makes a difference when you have 20 million gold at the end, or 100 million gold.
It makes a difference. Coding is hard, Brian. Let's give the Blizzard developers proper credit. Now, Burns, I want to poke at you here because you did something crazy. So, to grok the expansion story in fullness, you went back and played the entire original story and then moved on to the expansion story content. Was that juice worth the squeeze, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, so I think for me, it felt... So when I started, because I started the first couple of characters I created, I just started, at the basically expansion like start. So basically like you would do with any seasonal character. And it was just like, there's just enough of the stuff that was foggy enough in my head that it's like, I kind of just want to see how all this played out again. How did everything get to where it's starting here?
Was stuff really foggy, or did you just want to hear Sid's voice actor again? It's fine if you did. No judgment. Lorath is the greatest.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of it. And it must have been way too expensive to get him in for only a $30 expansion. So we'll have to probably wait until we get there for the later ones in order to have anything other than just kind of one or two voice lines here or there, and that was about it. It was a little foggy, like especially some of the stuff at the end. Like there were like key parts that I could remember. I think the thing that threw me like the most for a loop was Urivar. I was like, was that guy actually in? But no, he had nothing to do with any of the stuff earlier on. So that's what kind of threw me for a loop, was like where all of that stuff was at. But no, it was fun going through, and it was actually fun to get through, like, because I think I finished the main story or the initial story stuff around level like 45 or 50. So it felt like an actual progression through the normal game, and then I was getting to like the Paragon levels when I really got into the Nahantu story. And so I think that just felt right going through it that way. It was definitely not the most efficient way. I mean, everything I'm saying is the least efficient way to approach the expansion if you've played all of Diablo 4 before. But for me, it was fun. It was probably a lot more than I really should have done for this, but I still enjoyed it.
And Brian, you're a noted cutscene skipper. How did you approach the expansion story content?
It was, I mean, outside of the Mephisto stuff, I thought it was crazy boring. I thought there was... Kelsey is someone who really likes story, like, a lot. That is shown by the fact that she's read 116 books this year, something just absurd. And even she was, like, jamming on the circle button to skip, like, dialogue towards the end of it, because it was just, it kept dragging on. And when you have these little small scenes where they're not saying anything interesting, it's just, like, almost like filler. God. Kill me now. If one's shite, that's not technically swearing. And if
Appreciate
10
you. Thank you.
is like the greatest thing ever, I would give it a 4. The cutscenes were cool, but other than that, like, yawn. And for the love of God, bing dong do, dong dong dee, dong 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 dong, when they're just like trying to talk in their Amazonian language, and it goes on for minute after minute after minute, and there's no subtitles. Like, this is just stupid at this point.
And Bernsey, let me jump in here for a second. Full disclosure, I barely touched the story. Casey and John haven't finished it. Casey, John, do you guys have anything that you want to chime in with the story before Burns gives a rebuttal to Brian's burning hatred of the Vassal of Hatred?
Yeah. I mean, I will agree to a point with Brian where, look, I play Diablo to beat up, kill demons and blow stuff up and smash stuff, right? And I think Diablo does best when it gives you the big, awesome Blizzard cinematic and then says, okay, now go kill a bunch of stuff. I will say, though, that outside of, they did some really, really cool, in-game engine cutscenes in this expansion that I don't feel like they did a lot in the original base game of D4, right? So I think you have 3 different cinematics. You have the awesome Blizzard, that opening cinematic for the expansion is amazing, right? So those Blizzard cinematics are always good. You have then the middle in-game engine where no, now I'm face to face with my character model. Those are fantastic. And then you have the in-game all the monsters run away and you have a talk between some characters, and those tend to drag on.
And John, I want to rebut something that you said there. Speaking for both Phoenix and I don't necessarily think that Diablo is, as a franchise, at its best when you're just slaying monsters. Diablo 3 had a very nuanced pace between story content, fighting, story content, and a very focused story throughout the thing. I think Diablo 3 did a masterful job of telling a great story that Diablo 4 failed to capture, at least in the base game story.
Diablo 3 kept the pace moving, though, right? And I think where the base game did a much better job, I think, of the expansion. I think the expansion does kind of slow things down, and even in side quests and things of that nature, it's not moving the needle fast enough, especially because, hey, I've already played through a ton of Diablo 4 content, and now I'm trying to play seasonal, and I want to do the story. You gotta keep the pace going here, and I think that the normal in-game cutscenes could just move it along a little quicker.
Casey,
but
go
I
ahead.
guess to rebut that a little bit, I mean, you can skip, in the in-game cutscenes, you can skip the dialogue. So, the way I approach it, unless I'm fully enraptured with what I'm hearing and reading, I'll read it. And if I finish it before they're done talking, I'll skip it and then read the next one and then skip it. That's the most efficient way to get through, the story. I think it's funny that, Brian's read of the Diablo 4 story is that these cutscenes and these dialogue are, as long as, freaking Kojima at his most Metal Gear Solid, where it's, 40 minutes where you just have the controller down and are watching things. It's it's nowhere close to that. It's just so funny to me that Brian's experience makes it feel that way.
But how uninteresting is the content if after 35 seconds it feels like a Kojima cutscene? That has nothing to do with the quality of the cutscene. It has everything to do with poor writing and just I feel like they had to make some overarching story because of the expansion, and it just wasn't that great of a story. What did it really add?
Well, it added the whole discussion of what Narelle has to go through trying to deal with this burden that she carried on into this part of the story, right? And how, even though it's the right thing to do, how it's completely destroying everything around her.
Which they say in that one phrase, they say what do they say? That Mephisto is great at making the righteous decision, the one that punishes the person the worst. They could have just said the line and just skipped that entire 14 hours of cutscenes, and then I would have been there.
I still don't think there's anywhere close to even like I think the expansion content maybe takes 12 hours to get through. 14 hours is not there's not that much cutscenes. Like I think Brian's overblowing this just a little bit, and it's not the way he plays games. It's not the reason why he plays games, so I can completely understand that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go out there and say that this is like the epitome of fantastic storytelling. And even that from start to finish that I fully enjoyed what they did with Vessel of Hatred. I don't think it's the worst story ever, like you guys are maybe making it sound like. So I just wanted to make sure there was a little bit of a counter to that. I have my gripes. I will not get into it because most of you guys are not far enough along for me to say that. But yeah, there's definitely some things I really got frustrated with, especially as it got closer to the end of the expansion. And yeah, once you guys get there, it'll be interesting to get your guys' takes on it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your passion and thank you for the defense, Burns. I think that I'm not very far into the story. It starts off with a bang, and I'm super invested where I am at so far after just getting stabbed, floating down the river, or waking up in Nahantu. It's like, oh, well, I should have played this more before we recorded, but life is what life is. I think that the perspective being on Nerel carrying the Soul Stone is interesting because D1, like, you defeat Diablo, you trap him in a stone, you jam it in your head. D2, you're chasing down your former hero. D3, it's been a while since I played the story. I don't remember that premise of it, but I think that the premise of that story of following Nerel and the consequences of having a demon imbued in a Soul Stone and, like, having that in your possession, I think that's a pretty compelling hook. And Brian just hates everything that's fun and good. Additional improvements with the Season of Hatred. We're going to move off of expansion content onto seasonal content, and I draw a very distinct line because I fully understand and grok in fullness the difference between expansion and seasonal content. And Burns, you're going to be the arbiter of all things on that line. But additional improvements for the new seasonal content for the Season of Hatred include leveling adjustments, new max levels, a new difficulty system, adjustments to the Paragon system, realm-wide Paragon levels shared across characters, and updates to itemization. So, Casey, we'll start with you on this one. What is the best change in the Season of Hatred?
I think it would be to leveling, and I was going to touch on this later, but like just the ability to speed everything up with what they did with the opals. Yeah, the opals that give you an additional 15% boost, and then you can stack those with the other elixirs, and then you can stack them with incense later on, and then the additional experience boosts with the ashes and everything like that. There's so many different ways that you can stack ways to boost experience that you can have a not maxed out, but you can have a level 60 character in. Like Joey said, by the time you're finished with the story, you're probably going to have your level 60 just by playing that. And if you really hit it hard and do above ground content, run through dungeons, stuff like that, like your characters, they made it so much easier and so much faster to get where you need to get.
Well, you appreciate that it's easier and faster. Should they just cut out levels 0 through 60 and let you start an expansion character at the Paragon board and like cut out all that early level grinding and just give you a big stack of skill points to assign when you start?
That's actually a really good question. I mean, there is some fun aspect of getting there, but there's also, I think the fun is getting your character to that point and then tweaking it too. So I guess I can see both sides to that, and I know there are certain games that let you kind of do that, or advance 40 levels at a time or whatever, and then you have to get the last 20 or whatever. But I don't know. I just really enjoy the process of getting there. But at the same time, I think if I could have just gotten a level 60 character instantly, I probably would have done it now that I think about it.
I think there's something, though, for seasonal where, like, one, there's the race to the top, right? So that's a part of it. Like, who's going to get to the top of that leaderboard first, right? And everyone's starting from 0. I also think that, you're adding in new elements, right? So you're adding in new elements each season. So saying, hey, we're all going to start at 0 and like now start to figure out like, oh, what is the new element, right? It's the realm walkers in this case, right? How do we monetize that the best to ramp ourselves forward? And I think that, it gives everybody who's not the uber player a little bit more time to kind of play catch up. By like not being like everyone starts at level 60, has their max skills, and now I can use that build I had last time that was just killer, and I'm just going to take that build and just be at the top level. It lets people kind of gradually build out and see, nerfs and tweaks that they've done with the season and how that impacts the items they're going to build. And also like the normally in a season you're going to have those unique aspects that come out per classes, right? So you can kind of see them as you're building your class, say, oh, I'm going to grab this new unique aspect that may be out for this and try that as I'm leveling up.
John, I hear what you're saying about watching what else is happening in the world and what other players are doing in that race to the top. That doesn't appeal to me at all. Like, I just want to wander around, smash some monsters, and level up my own pace. Bernsey, are you with me and meandering around and finding your own path, or do you want to take a more... Are you more concerned with what other players and other characters are doing?
No, I'm never going to come anywhere close to what some of those people are doing with their broken arse builds. So, yeah, I mean, that has no sway over it. I don't know. Like, I don't think... This is kind of me getting ahead of the skis here a little bit, but I don't know. The seasonal content to me never seems like it's anything other than something to do on the side. Like, if that was all I was doing, was running through that, I don't know that I would find the game as interesting as actually going through the story and having a reason to be going around these other things. But that's maybe my personal opinion, as especially maybe a little bit more story-focused gamer. So, yeah, I don't know. That's my perspective. Brian, I'm sure, has a much different perspective.
Well, Brian,
I do.
Let's start
it's the power trip for me, right? Like, that's the entire concept of it. And the story, I think the stories to go through the story once, I think that is a decent enough thing to do. But I'm glad that when it comes to seasonal characters, there is a button that says skip all campaign and story and then just move on. And the seasons should be strong enough to carry on themselves, but some aren't. And that's a fair point.
Well, Brian,
Do you think this one is?
Blah.
I think with how much... Well, that'll just lead me to this question. So that's... The strength of this season is obviously the Spiritborn. I don't think it's the story. That's just my opinion. I think anyone who listens to this podcast knows what my opinion is on that.
Well, Brian, let me pause you for 1 second right there. Those are both expansion content pieces. Like, for the seasonal content, like not paying that $40 for the Spiritborn and the additional story content, do you feel like this season, the Season of Hatred, is a worthwhile upgrade to the Diablo IV formula on its own without the other expansion elements folded with it?
I think that they made this season notably less tweaked than the prior one with intent to make you get the Vessel of Hatred. I think that was done with intent. This was a season where there was a lot of optimization that was done, and I'm going to cover that in a second. But I do think that they made this season, like if you take away the DLC, there isn't too much going on this season, and they did that to induce FOMO. Yeah. I have no question on that. The build is so overpowered, and like John had mentioned before, hey, let's just put a Spiritborn on a pedestal. Let's give it its moment to shine. And then next season, we'll kind of bring it in line with the other classes. But they tried to induce as much as they could FOMO in this season that this would have been a season I probably would have skipped if not having the DLC. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that would be what I would agree with, too, for the time that I put into the game.
They turned off the loot pinatas, right? I felt last season it was loot pinatas, right? Last season you could go out into, anywhere in the open world and catch people like turning in whatever the boons were or whatever, and like, hey, these big monsters are spawning, and now like I don't know, I had like 50 legendaries in like the first 2 hours of playing just by walking around the overworld, right? And they kind of, I feel like they've turned off that loot pinata, and maybe it's because I've just been doing seasonal the DLC content more, but like, you know, that's what I feel like they kind of took that out, and like, yeah, they slowed it down. They slowed down the season because they want you to go over and do they want the new hotness to be the DLC.
And I would agree with that. And they also made target farming way easier. Okay. So like just some of these are just some of the things they tweaked, right? They removed the grind up to 100. Now you're only going to 60. They knew that last 40 levels was kind of annoying. And the longer that you keep people from the end game content, particularly the boss rating, a lot of the tier stuff, you can't do until you're higher level anyways. That's going to cap you. They changed how the pits work. I love this. The pits are now unlocking the torment levels, which is better than the Cathedral of Light and all that kind of capstone dungeon stuff. They also now are having you level your glyphs, aka your gems, in the pit system, which is just like what they did in Diablo 3 with the Greater Rift system. It's the exact same thing. It's a smarter move. Now the Nightmare Dungeons are where you go to get the crafting materials, which makes them worth doing. And now with Nightmare Dungeons, your goal is to get to the end and murder the end boss. There's some side stuff you can do if you want to do it, and that's super great, but it's just get to the boss, be done. Casey, in case you did not know, Nightmare Dungeons have a % chance to have an XP well. If you find that, it gives you an hour of another 15% on top of all that stuff you talked about. So if you get one of those wells, then you can go hit up Horde mode, and Horde mode levels you like insanity. So now you're jumping like 15 levels over the course of a Horde. Obusite is one of the three. Obusite, Nethal Iron, and the ingots were what the crafting materials were. There's 3 separate levels to it. Now it's just one. It makes it so much easier to get it. You can get it from the Nightmare Dungeons, or you can get it from the Hordes. That's great. Torment 1 through 4, all it does is really affect drop rates. Before, you couldn't get certain things to drop unless you were in World Tier 2, 3, 4. Now in the tier systems, it's just when you kill a Torment boss, it drops more stuff. Not more stuff, should I say, but it drops more specific stuff, and it's all Ancients. They've eliminated the bosses dropping anything other than Ancients or Mythics. Mythics they made brutally hard to get. I have north of 50 kills on Torment bosses, and I have not got a single Mythic yet. I'm sitting on 3 sparks, so I'm waiting to build my Mythic. Can't get it. So it'll come in time. The Realm Walkers were a great choice because now we've got more ways to target farm. We've got gold farming, equipment farming, we've got boss material farming, all these easier ways to get it. Tributes in the Undercity. Nobody's even talked about the Undercity. That was a great part of the DLC. More target farming that you can do. You get tributes in the world, and then you can use those in the Undercity to do these speed runs, and at the end, you can be specific about what you want for your outcomes. So I do agree with John to a certain extent about how, hey, they kind of eliminated the loot pinata stuff, but like even using the barter system with the allies, like you have all these ways to specifically go after the gear you want, so it doesn't feel so random that you're just waiting for the thing that you want to pick up.
I've literally engaged with none of the things that Brian has talked about, so I have no rebuttal.
So
That's all.
I don't know.
Kind of end game. A lot of it is, anyways.
Has anybody else done Realm Walkers at all?
Yeah, we took down a
that's
handful
like-
of
I'm
Realm
sure
Walkers.
everybody has. Yeah, that's like a big one.
I did that my first, like, that was the first thing I did because, well, again, like, the first thing I do before I go into the game is I watch YouTube videos and stuff, and that was recommended to do the story stuff because the Realm Walkers are how you get the opals, which is that 15% experience boost. So said do the storyline or the new season storyline first, eat a Realm Walker, get your opals, level, and then rinse and repeat.
Was it fun tackling those Realm Walkers right away for you? Because like Phoenix and I started tackling them around level 20, and from like levels 20 to 40, we weren't able to do a lot of damage to them, and so it was more frustrating than fun for us until we got beyond level 40 and we could do some more damage and take them down more quickly.
I beat my first one at level 8.
Yeah, look at this guy. He's awesome at games.
With no
Yeah,
ultimate on his build too. No ultimate.
Yeah.
Well, at level 8, you're nowhere close to the ultimate.
You
so,
just got
yeah,
5 basic
That's why he
skills
doesn't
and
have
you're
one now.
firing
He's
them
like, if I didn't need it at level 8, what do I care? I didn't even put it. I don't even have any more skill points. Just right off the bat, don't need any more.
And it doesn't make it, I mean, even late stage, Casey, to be honest, it's not all that much better. Because the thing is, even if you can nuke everything on the screen, it still has to walk a set distance. So if I'm with Kelsey, I'm doing my own AoE thing, she's doing her quill volley, and God forbid there's 2 other quill volleys there, like, because everybody's using that build. Nothing even like lives. It shows up and dies, and you're just like walking along with the thing until it gets to the spot where it sits its butt down and decides to get murdered. But like you're just wandering along and there's nothing to do. So it's I think that part could maybe be changed because it's just kind of like taking the dog for a walk, but then you murder the dog. So I don't know. North Dakota governor. But anyways, yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah, I don't know. The first time I did one, I was like, that's pretty cool. That was neat. And then you go into the dungeon, and then there's another dungeon inside the dungeon. And I was like, okay, that was a neat experience. Like, by the third one that I did, I was just like, it's like rinse, wash, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. And it just, I don't know. Like you said, it's just hit all the stuff as it continues to fart out all these demons. And then it'll eventually stop and you just kill it. And then you go into a dungeon that's fairly uninteresting, and you go into another level of a dungeon that's fairly uninteresting, and then you're done. And I don't know. I don't know. I didn't find it super interesting. I'll eventually probably do it to try to max out the seasonal stuff with the Zacharium, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's anything that's going to grab me much more than that.
Yeah, and again, I think it all ties back to what Brian was saying earlier. It's like, it's not the focus, right? Like, even that piece of the seasonal content isn't the focus of the seasonal content. The focus of the seasonal content is, guess what? Now you can get to the end game stuff way better. All right, awesome. There's some cool, like, there's another, like, honor thing or reputation thing you have to get. Like, here's your, fill this bar up so you can get some cool loot or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not really the draw. Right? If you want to finish out the tier and the seasonal tier and all that, great, do this. But really, if you just want to get to the end game to do pit runs and get loot, which a lot of people do, right? To have the strongest guy, you can skip all that. And they give you those potions so you can skip all that. Right? That's one of the things I liked about it, right? Beyond the actual stacking, like Casey was talking about, or like the XP and this and that, was that thing where it's like, hey, look, all right, I went and did a realm walker. It took too long because I had to walk the dog, so to speak. But I get 4 of these potions. Awesome. Now I can go, and that's 30 minutes a pop, so I have 2 hours where if I'm running other content, I can pop that potion and I'm still getting that reputation build like I was doing the seasonal or the seasonal content. And I think that's a great thing, right? It's anything where you're giving me that option to do what I want to do, but still move the needle in other areas is a good thing.
Yeah, good stuff. Here's some more things that I'm confused about. Infernal Hordes, like a horde mode, Infernal Compasses, new weapons, and reduced resource management. Like, it's all bundled in with this seasonal content, right? Like, what are Infernal Hordes?
That was last season, by the way, Tom. Like, that's not new to this season, that's last season. And that was the main reason that they were drawing people in. So, the horde mode is basically, Infernal Hordes is just... you can use it in a couple of different ways. It's really strong for leveling, particularly if you're trying to level up your allies. If you have all of your XP gear on and you're doing... Hordes come in 6 wave, 8 wave, 10 waves. And if you go all the way through a 10 wave, you'll level up a couple of those guys like 4 or 5 times. It can be crazy depending on what torment you're on. So the essential idea is you come into this... It drops you off in an arena. You kill this big baddie to start. And then you start killing waves. As you kill enemies and you kill fodder, you fill up a meter, and then when the meter fills up, either on the north, south, east, west of the arena, you're going to have something occur where it's like, a gigantic monster comes up, or there's a spire that you have to kill these creatures within the spire, or a exploding mass comes up. All these different things. And when you kill these things, particularly elites or some of the things that pop up, you get what's called Aether. And that is like your currency with which to spend at the end of the run. So at the end of each wave, it gives you an option of 3 things. And of those 3, it's going to increase the difficulty most of the time of what you're dealing with. Sometimes it just alters the mechanics of the particular fight. But then this will stack each time with each wave until the end of the match. So the one that people want to always go for is Hellborn. Hellborn are like the elites. Anything that gives you Hellborn, you want to choose because you're trying to tell the system, hey, give me more Hellborn, give me more Hellborn. Because when you kill these things, you get more and more and more of this currency. After you've gone through your waves, you then exit the arena. You fight these 3 bosses at the same time. When you kill all 3 bosses, you have completed the Horde run. You only have so many deaths. If you die 4 times or whatever else it is, I think it's 4, your run's over. If you succeed, you then get a couple of choices. You can either there's a chest that you can choose to hit that will dump out a bunch of like greater aspect weapons, or you can hit a chest that dumps out or that the weapons chest is 200 of the currency. If you want to blow the rest of your currency, you can either choose to do it on craftable materials, which is another chest, or in gold. Whatever chest you pick, it takes all of your resources into that, which I think is a step in the wrong direction. Last season, you could pick the craftable chest. It would dump out the materials, and then you could pick it again and again and again and again, and it would just take a certain amount from you. Now you just blow all of it at once. So either you could spend everything on the crafting material on this run, or you can spend everything on the gold. So it's the Horde mode is a really strong way to level. It gives you options to collect weapons, and there's certain ancients you can only get in the Horde mode. And then you can also use it as another way outside of Nightmare Dungeons to collect craftables so you can masterwork. In case people don't know what that is, masterworking is really important because it's just every time you masterwork an item, it increases all of its stats 5%. Every third time you masterwork an item, it's going to randomly assign a 25% bonus to one of the stats, and you're usually hoping for certain things to get hit. But Horde mode overall is a lot of fun, but unfortunately, did any of you guys play couch co-op besides Tom?
Nope.
Okay. Horde mode is jank, and Blizzard hasn't fixed it yet. And what I mean by that is last season it was happening, and this season it's happening worse. If you're playing 2-player co-op, at times, Horde mode hits a bug, and you can't complete it. So Kelsey and I were 10 waves in, or 9 waves in. We've got almost 1,000 of this currency. We're having a great run. So we've been getting all the things that we need to really build it up, getting Hellborns. We're getting extra currency off elites, all the stuff that you want. And then there's an enemy that spawns underneath the level. And we can't hit it. So you can't complete the wave, and you just have to leave. Or you'll finish the wave, and the 3 options that come up to tell you, hey, you can pick one of these 3, the game bugs, they don't come up. You're staying in an empty arena. You have to leave. And it's really common with co-op.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan, because I've noticed in my experience with both the Season of Hatred and the Vessel of Hatred expansion content, the couch co-op has been super buggy. There are times when player 2's quest doesn't track with mine, so I had to actively log out. Phoenix had to log in, replay sections of the quest by herself. We've had problems where she couldn't complete her Zekurum rewards. We just ran into all these bugs and all these issues, always tied to player 2, which is super duper frustrating because for me, D4, even though it's my most played game on PlayStation, it is a couch co-op experience for me. And if it is broken for player 2, that means it is not entirely useful for me, player 1.
There's times too when Kelsey and I would be playing, and we would both lose the color underneath our characters. Doesn't bother me so much. I have a general idea where I am. Kelsey relies on that yellow circle desperately. So when it's not there, she is launching herself off the screen. I'm like, Kelsey, you are up in the north. You're stuck against the wall. Oh, I can't even tell where I'm at. And then we're trying to figure it out. But it's wildly buggy. And this season was buggier than any other one that we played before.
Yeah, I presume you're like us, Brian. You're playing with one PlayStation Pro account, and then Kelsey logs in on her own PlayStation profile without the Plus account.
She's the Ovarian Barbarian. Yep.
Yes. That is a yes. Cool. It's unfortunate that it's so buggy because they're adding a lot of cool stuff. I understand that programming is complex, but if it doesn't work as a couch co-op experience, you got to stop publishing it as couch co-op experience. That is my determination whether or not to buy with a product right now. It's really disappointing to me how buggy this was for a couch co-op experience.
I mean,
Yeah, and I was just going to say that the difficulty for us winds up being is when those hordes, particularly when you're running like a 10 wave horde, it's taking you 15, maybe on the high end 20 minutes to do it. And then it locks you out at the very end. And it's like, well, I don't want to come back and do this. Just go do something else. It just kind of stinks that way.
so I know it's not seasonal content. It's part of the expansion, but I'm playing co-op and I don't have to have anybody else to play with. So I got my dude Rahir with me with his BA shield and just pounding the crap out of things. And then I got this other guy coming up and shooting arrows whenever I do one ability. And I think the Mercenaries edition with the expansion it helps so much with running through stuff solo. So once you get the chance to unlock that and you get to unlock all the characters for that, that's super awesome. And it's a ton of fun to level up the Mercenaries, and have them. And then, I haven't changed it. Like the first two I got have basically just been my Mercenary and then my Reinforcement. And so, but I think it would be fun, like, as I get into harder content, like switching between them for different abilities depending upon what I'm attacking and what will help me.
Great transition, Burns. That feels like a callback to D2 and D3 that I haven't experienced in D4 yet. How do the Mercenaries work? Like, how do you unlock them? Is it just progress through the story and you eventually get them?
There's like quests for each one, or like you have to go to a certain part of the map, and then you just follow through, and you eventually unlock them, and then you go back to wherever like that home base is.
The den.
Yeah, the den. Yeah,
It
and then
starts you
they're
out.
there.
You get directly told, like, you get one, right? Like, the story walks you into, like, oh, okay, and these are mercenaries, and like then you can like go collect, like, hey, go find these people with these things, and they each have their own little side story. And actually, those were, I think, some of the best stories in the expansion.
Mm-hmm.
I loved all three of those little quest side stories for the mercenaries you get.
Yeah, they were probably some of the best examples of like going through and playing something and then having like little bits of story while you're playing, and then a little sort of scene kind of in between a couple of things, to help give you a feel for who these different characters are. And I think the best thing about them also is that a lot of the world events that you run into, that's not the right word, but the big orange circles that you run into will have those characters in there. So like one of them is Varaya, if I'm saying that right. I'm probably not, but a barbarian, and basically you have to try to kill more things than her. And I think that's pretty cool. And then with, I think it's Sabu, is the archer dude. And like he'll be saying, okay, go kill this one, now kill this, and he's basically telling you to kill the things, and that's what gets you to sort of the master level of doing that event. And so I think that's also neat to sort of have them in the world that you're running into in between things, even if you don't, whether you have them in your party or not. I think that's also neat. So it's like, hey, they're part of the world. They're acting here in Nahantu while you're off doing your own thing, kind of. So I thought that was pretty neat.
And they're worth leveling up, because as you level them up, you unlock the currency of what's called the den, which is where these guys hang out. And you can barter in the den using this currency to get very specific things. Like you can ask for, I'm going to get items with a greater aspect for utility, or items with a greater aspect for defense. So if you're trying to farm for that greater aspect that you need that you haven't gotten yet, it's another way to target it. It's also really useful because some of these guys give you different abilities. The guy with the shield, he can, if something is going to hit you for more than 15% of your life, he can tank the whole thing. So it's nice to keep you from getting one-shotted. The guy that is, not the scoundrel, like the rogue, is essentially what he is. He shows things on your minimap, like collectible items. If you've hired him and you're playing by yourself, because you cannot have these guys running unless you can't have a main guy running with you and a backup. You can't have both if you're playing with someone. You can only have the backup. But if you're playing by yourself and you're running around with the rogue, he'll show you things that you can pick up on the map, which is super useful at times. So they're worth actually leveling up. And they have skill trees and skill points. So you can build these guys out to whatever you want them to be, which is kind of a cool thing to do if you're on your own.
Yeah, sounds like a really neat system. Casey, I'm going to point at you at this one. My show notes are a mess. We're all over the place. I'm horribly disorganized for this show. Diablo IV is a living game. It has changed a lot since its release. Casey, what do you think is the biggest change to D4 across all the time you spent with it? And what is the best change that Diablo IV has made?
Wow, that's
Yeah, good luck. You're on the spot.
Yeah, and I didn't see this question and completely blank. So the biggest change and the best change, is that what you said?
Yes.
I have no idea. Like, I don't. Can I punt to somebody else? Because I don't think I'm far enough into this season to like know what the biggest change is.
Certainly. Let's go.
Like, so far, I'm just leveling and I'm just doing a lot of the same stuff that I did last time. So
yeah, and I'm with you with the exact same experience. Let's go John, Joey, then Brian for this one. John and Joey, then Brian can tell us where we're right or wrong.
Mercenaries, I think that's the as a person who plays single player, I think, look, you gave me some cool stories, you gave me some cool characters that hang around with me. It's a little bit of Marvel versus Capcom fun where they jump in and do some cool stuff, right? And it's another thing to level up, right? You gave me another experience bar to fill, which I always love when Diablo does that.
So that's maybe the best change. Would you say that's the biggest change to the D4 formula so far?
No, I mean all the leveling changes and everything. I mean, basically saying, "Hey, we did these experiments, and now no, this worked better this way in D3, so we're going to do that." And it's what people really want. I think that they had that on the back burner, and they were like, "We're going to see how this new way goes, and the people like it." And like, nope, we're just slowly moving back to what worked for D3 at the end of D3, and melding that into D4.
And
those are the biggest changes.
To specifically point out one of those changes. Changing the way that plants work so that you can make your elixirs. You no longer have to farm for specific types of plants in specific areas or convert plants into other plants. Just having every plant be bundled herbs. Terrific change. Bernsey, the biggest change in D4 over all the seasons or all of your experience with it for it, and then the best change.
So I think the biggest change is that the leveling and, reworking how... Because having that stupid capstone dungeon, sort of sitting there that you have to go through that in order to unlock the next world tier, I hated that system, and especially because that capstone dungeon was buggy as heck.
Let's clarify that. The way that Diablo IV originally worked and through, I think the first 3 seasons we all played for Game Club, and season 3...
Yep.
You had to play through the entire main story, and then there was a capstone dungeon before you could fully adjust your difficulty level and then earn all of the different rewards for completing things in the different areas. The capstone dungeon was a major bottleneck that Casey ruined for me the first time through the experience.
Sorry about that. I just think it's funny that Joey brought up that he hated the capstone dungeon so much, yet when we started this over, he decided to play through the entire story again.
Yeah, story.
Getting into the new one.
Well, story good, capstone dungeon bad.
I didn't have to do the capstone dungeon either, so it was perfect. So yeah, there's still bottlenecks to the progression. So like, you can't go above a certain level until you hit level 60, and then I didn't realize that there's still some things I think to work out with that, because it's weird. Like, once I got to a certain level of, like, once I started doing like Paragon leveling and I wasn't in Torment, you basically for the most part get yellows and blues for equipment, and it's just like, why? This is just a waste. There's no point in me having any of this garbage. And it's like only in very specific cases would you get one orange drop. Or 2 oranges to drop. And so it felt like it got to a point where at a certain level, because I think as you're leveling through up to 60, you're getting a good amount of these legendaries and a couple of uniques here and there. And then it gets to a point where that just drops back off a cliff and you're getting hot garbage until you, I think, go into Torment. And then I think you start getting more stuff. But then the Torment is locked behind the pits, but I still think the pits are the pits are better, and you don't have to go through them sequentially. You can kind of jump up. So, like, I went into the Pit of the Artificer for the first time and was able to just do the level 20 right away so that I can unlock Torment level 1. Since I was, like, just slaughtering everything at the level I was at, it was fun to actually have a challenge for the first time in, like, all of my Paragon levels, which is 77.
I want to poke at something that you said there. You mentioned the gear and the gear drops, Burns. Brian, I don't know if it's a unique experience playing couch co-op, but we noticed that player 1, the active player, the player whose world we were playing in, which was always me, always had better loot drops than player 2. Did you notice that in your experience?
No, I mean, Kelsey, how do I want to word this? She's not going to listen to this, right? No, she won't. She never pays attention to what I do. Okay, so anyways, Kelsey, she always is like, oh, it's not fair. It's not fair. It didn't drop this thing for me. It's not fair. I'm like, girl, it is ones and zeros. It doesn't have opinions on anything. It just spits out a number. That's all this is. And what we found, though, is that when we were running certain Torment bosses, that was not accurate. I'm player 1 because if I'm not on the left side of the screen, she's lost with where her stuff is. This is just... She's still kind of like getting used to playing some more of this.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, when we were running Duriel gives us a staff. It's the Spiritborn staff that makes your core skills free to cast. It's a really powerful quarterstaff. You want it, and it's awesome. But when we were running it, it's supposed to be a specific drop for Duriel. We killed him 10, 15 times. I didn't get that staff once. Kelsey had like 6 or 7 of them, and at one point she's dropping her used remnants for me. Oh, here, this one's a 2.4. It's not a 3. Have this. I would like drop it at my feet, and then I'd get that. So I would say that wasn't accurate. She might say differently because she like views everything as like the game's favoring me. So that's kind of the way that we have seen it.
Interesting. We didn't exactly track it in a spreadsheet, but it seemed like I was getting a lot more legendaries in the last season that we played together, and I definitely got more uniques than she did this time around. It just seems like the drop rates seem to favor P1.
Yeah, they. I think mathematically, I would be surprised if they did. I can tell you that though that there were a couple of different times where there were drops in the Horde, where it'll drop stuff for player 2, but you can't even collect it. But that, I think, is, again, it's just being buggy. And, like, I understand that bugs are a thing. It's wild how this one mode, which is an important thing, it just keeps getting them. I really think that this game has been going the right direction and trying to streamline what it's doing. Early in this season, if you guys didn't know about it, iron ore, which is like a basic thing that you get all the time, right? White material. And rawhide, those were the bottlenecks because you couldn't pick them up. They accidentally had screwed something up when they were playing with the code and they weren't dropping, so people couldn't do anything briefly. Gold is still a problem. Horde mode, you used to be able to do a high-level run in Tier 4, and you'd come out with 52 million gold from a single run, but you go through that fast. If you reset masterworking, that's 5 million. If you're re-rolling on an item that you've re-rolled a bunch of different times, that's 3 or 4 million. You go through gold fast. If you build a mythic, it's 50 million. Now the most you can get is like 15 million at a time. So your best bet is to get an Uber weapon, go on the forums, and sell it to somebody else who's playing Diablo in an excessive amount for 1 billion gold. I think those are all challenges. Something we didn't even mention, you guys, the runes. The runes have been awesome this season. So the runes, basically, you've got 2 chunks to them. One rune will dictate a ability from another class that you can use. And the other rune that you attach to it is how much, or it's whatever action you do to create what's called the offering. When you have enough offering, it activates your rune. And I'm running around with a Druid's Barrier around me all the time. And that's super fun. Or I'm casting Decrepify all the time. Right now, as a Spiritborn, I'm casting my favorite spell from a Necromancer. So it's kind of cool to put these together. Brian, as time...
Brian, quick pause. I think that Casey had something earlier, and then John wanted to jump in with a point, too.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
Oh. Oh, you're good. I was just wondering if like maybe you guys are having differences in your loot drops. Like, obviously like certain equipment and stuff you have has a luck factor to it. I wonder if maybe just pieces of gear that you're wearing has a luck aspect on it that is increasing that character's percent drop. Like if you're not paying attention and you're just going with whatever gives you the highest, damage or defense numbers, whatever. But there's ones that give you certain drops are better. So I wonder if that maybe play into it a little bit.
Yeah, good point, Casey, because I'm completely focused on attack speed and dodge percentage, and I literally don't know what any of my other abilities do. So that I could look into that a little bit more. John, did you have a point or rebuttal for Brian?
Well, I was just, more of an observation, right? So it's just pretty amazing how far, we're all into such different areas with this game, right? And I think this is why, like, Diablo and Diablo 4 itself is pretty amazing, right? I mean, look, some of us are more focused on the story. Some of us just, like, jump in and don't have ultimates on our build, right? Some of us are going uber down the rabbit hole of pits and craziness that half the people listening to this podcast don't know any of the words coming out of our mouths.
Hey, that's
right?
me.
So to me, it's actually a real testament to what Blizzard's done with this game, right? Where they have taken a franchise and they're continuing to hey, we got to monetize it, right? Let's get the seasons going. Let's get the expansion going. But they're giving everybody what they want. Right. And I think that's a pretty cool thing for this game to do where hey, anybody, no matter what you wanted to get out of the game, you can find it in some way and have some fun, whether it's couch co-op, whether it's min-maxing to the uber extreme, or just a good story that's going to allow you to just experience something new and different. I think it's pretty awesome.
John, you put that really well, because how I wanted to kind of wrap up what I was saying was Diablo 4 right now has a ton of activities that you can do that are fun, and they're all making you stronger as you do them. Okay, I'm going to run pits to level up my glyphs. Okay, I ran 3 or 4 pits. I'm bored now. Well, let's do some masterworking. Okay, let's go to a nightmare dungeon. Cool, let's do that. All right, we got some of that stuff. Great, got some XP. Wonderful. Cool. Okay, well, now what do I want to do? Well, let's go target farm a boss because I want that one item. Great, done with that. Well, now I kind of got to get some more crafting material, or it'd be really nice to get some more gold. Okay, well, let's go run a horde. You can do all these different activities which shake up the gameplay just enough, and all of them are getting you better in a different way, so they're all useful. It kind of sucks when the horde mode last season was difficult because the horde was the best at everything. The best at giving you gear. It was the best at giving you crafting material, the best at giving you gold, the best at giving you leveling. So it made everything else irrelevant. But the nice thing is they're figuring out, hey, let's make every kind of little thing that we can do useful to you, increase your power, make you a better build. And as you do all of these things kind of together, you feel the power increase. And that's what I think a lot of people are playing, right? It's the power fantasy.
So, Brian, do you think that flexibility in playing the way that you want to play, build the way that you want to build, everything being a relevant way to embrace that power fantasy, do you think that is what makes Diablo 4 shine as we hit the expansion content in Season 4?
I think in a lot of different ways, they're getting smarter at listening to the user base, and they're also getting a lot smarter about making it sure that you have to find this balance between the people that want to just power level like crazy. The new content came out within a week. They've done everything and they're bored and they're upset going, why did I do this? Why am I playing this? It's been a week. There's no content left. It's like you spent 140 hours in a single week to get to this point. It's like, this is, you have to try to balance the hardcore and then guys like Casey and John, who are dads just trying to find some time to play, right? There's this huge spectrum of us as gamers, and some of us have more time than others. But Diablo 4 has become a game where if you want to sink a stupid amount of time into, you're going to see that, and your character will perform at that optimized level on the back end if you feel like getting down to going for half of percentage points. But if you're also a dad just trying to find 2 2 hours, maybe an hour before you go to bed. They've got one button builds where you just walk around, you hold down the square button, everything dies, and you're like, I'm doing something. That's great. And that I think that there's a place for both. And now we're taking these kinds of gamers, we're giving them all interesting things to do. And all of between those two things combining together, you're joining and playing at a really fun time. I think I'm looking forward to next season when maybe the Spiritborn isn't the only choice to play, because I can tell you that playing anything else this season with the vessel, right, is going to be like, okay, why am I even trying to play a barbarian? Let's just go back to making another version of the Spiritborn. But they're starting to find a sweet spot. It took them some time. And it's really hard, right? Because particularly with Blizzard, the most vocal critics are always their most hardcore. And you have to kind of work with them a little bit. But I'm glad that they're finding something that can be more acceptable to everybody.
Yeah, Burnsy, you're wearing a shirt that says, give me story or give me death. Where does Diablo 4 shine for you, my friend? I was talking about your undershirt.
So I'll agree. I was like, is this like one of those 3D puzzle shirts where your eyes crossed and then you could read that? I never knew that was there. But I still agree, I think, with what my original thoughts were when we first talked about this earlier in the year. And that, going through, clearing the map, finding new areas, trying to find the little altars or shrines throughout the map, I think is tons of fun. Finding different enemies, and then, just like seeing the gear drop, trying to get better gear, watching the numbers go up. I think that's where Diablo still shines. The story stuff, I think, is solid right now. I'm interested to see where they go from here, I guess, would be what I would say. But otherwise, I think some of the additions were really cool. Like the mercenaries, it really helps for when you're adventuring solo, as well as the reinforcements for even when you're not adventuring solo is pretty nice. And I think it's all really smartly implemented in that they'll level up as you're using them, no matter which sort of role they're in, and you get sort of different abilities depending upon what they're doing. And then I also like some of the side stuff that I either didn't interface with before. So like the Pit of the Artificer I thought was pretty cool. And then the stuff that they added with the expansion with the Undercity, and sort of running kind of these really fast dungeon runs where you're trying to get through and keep the time going, I think is a really cool way to do it. Now, I've only done it a couple of times. Will it get boring to me, kind of like the Realm Walkers were after the 5th or 6th time? Maybe. I'm not sure. But it seems like it's a little bit more engaging of a system. And so kind of like Brian had said, it's nice that they're adding a lot of these things so that you have these variety of ways to try to continue to get stronger and get as high up in the difficulty as you can. And, continue to add to your Paragon boards. So, I think that's neat.
Yeah. Casey, you going to keep grinding out Realm Walkers for all time or what?
No, I mean, I only do those when I need more seething opals. But Ryan made some really good points, and that's just to piggyback on that. Like, I appreciate what they do as a dad who doesn't have a lot of time. So, like, giving me the ability to kind of speed run my character to where I need to, and I'm totally, like, right now just the one button masher where I can just run into an area and I can melt everything and I can level up my guy and get him to where I need to. And I love all the different things that they have for me. I love the content on the open world more than running dungeons. Like, I love the Hell Tides and all the events and different things that they have. There's so much content. It's almost overwhelming at times, honestly. Like, what do I want to do now? And I'm like, crap, I still haven't unlocked, this aspect in this dungeon. I got to go back and do this. I got to do some more exploring. But then I'm like, oh, look at shiny. Here's another Helltide that just started. Here's another event. Like, it's so easy to get distracted, and but so they made it to a point where it doesn't feel as grindy as it used to. So that I definitely appreciate as somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of you a little bit, Casey. Diablo 4 is my most played game on PlayStation, and it's getting to be a pretty wide margin at this point. And for me, my favorite thing is like, I'll make a plan. I'm like, I'm going to go do this thing. And then we get on our cats and we start riding over there, and it's like, oh, event, oh, seller, oh, dungeon, oh, we can make the tree happy and get 5 grim favors here. It's like, oh, well, we'll do this real quick. Oh, we're already earning these culling. And like, suddenly 2 hours has passed. We haven't touched the thing that we set out to try to do. And it's like, oh, well, I'm not really progressing anything, but we are having a ball. We're leveling up. And like, I love the moment-to-moment gameplay. Like, I just can't get enough of Diablo 4. I said it was the game of the year when it launched. I think it has improved and grown. And like, every time I jump into D4, I'm like, yeah, this is really freaking fun. We should just do this forever. Let's just send the kids off to school and we'll just play Diablo forever. John, where does the D4 experience shine for you?
Right, so I've already given it some really high praise, and I think the fun for me, though, is just, hey, turn on damage numbers, right? Get a build that you like, and just blow stuff up, right? It's just fun to, drop into a dungeon, wherever you like killing monsters in Diablo 4, you could do it, right? So, there's just something satisfying when you, throw a big, giant monster on the screen that's yours, and you're killing, other big giant demons and monsters. It's just fun.
Yeah, dude. Fighting Balrogs is great. Brian?
I think it's also important to just have some gratitude for the fact that when this did launch, this is a massively different game than when it first showed up. And just like Diablo 3, it took about a year to kind of get its rhythm going.
Disagree.
But,
it was priceless at launch. It was great.
Oh, no, that is complete BS. This thing was a turd taco when it showed up on the scene.
Nope, 2022 Game of the Year with a bullet.
Nope. let's review Game of the Year and see if it won.
It won the Outside is Overrated Game of the Year.
Yeah, but that you all know that voting system is some sort of odd bias that we haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, this is not a democracy, Brian. It's what Tom wants wins. That's why it's better than fantasy football.
That's why we all love you. So I'm just really happy that it got to where it is, and I'm really excited to kind of see where it goes, because this is a really strong point, and I want to see if they can add to it, and if they can add to it, then this is going to be something that's really incredible, maybe in the next year or so.
Yeah, it'll be really incredible, just like me. So that's going to wrap up our discussion of Diablo 4, the Season of Hatred, and the Vessel of Hatred expansion. Next month, we made an executive decision to go in a completely different direction. We're going to go with a small-scale indie darling, and for next month's Game Club game, we're going to play Final Fantasy XIV by Square Enix. Just a light little thing that we can jump into for 1 month, and then after 1 month of FF14, we're jumping into Ghosts of Tsushima for 2 months to tie to a board game show and a samurai themed show. So that is the immediate plan for Game Club. Everyone is smiling and happy and joyous with our decision. Yeah, I don't know.
Happy that I get to play more Diablo 4 while you guys play Final Fantasy 14.
See you there, Casey.
I mean, that's the joys of Game Club is that whoever wants to play what we're playing can play, and whoever doesn't, they don't have to. So,
yeah, and Burns and I will have a very lonely discussion. He'll have to deal with all my needling next month.
But, it has a completely free trial. It's available on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC.
I think you need Series X or a Series S. I don't think you can play it on the Xbone.
Yes, correct. No, you're correct. The Xbox One, you're boned if you got the Xbone. But yeah, so it's on PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, or the Xbox Series, or on PC. And I think the focus would probably just be talking about the initial Realm Reborn content, and maybe anything else that we kind of get into with that. So if you want to jump into it, I would say go ahead and go for it. My characters are on the Dynamis server on the Maduin world. It's a new world, so you're able to get faster experience. You're going to be able to level pretty quickly, and now that basically you can pretty much play through all of the content solo if you want to. You don't even have to worry about partying up with other people, except for a couple of specific instances. So It's about as accessible as it can be as a solo player, but it still has the option to do everything multiplayer if you'd like to. So if you have any questions about getting into it and you want to jump into it, just let me know.
Yeah, and like the free trial is awesome. Like you can truly play all of the content up to, I think, through the first 2 or 3 expansions. Like there are hundreds of hours of content that you can just jump into there. If nobody else is joining Burns and me, like I'm going to play Big Rock and we're going to play some Heavensward. Is that the first expansion?
Heavensward?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that'll be good stuff. But if other people want to join in, like I had the trial on PC, I had the trial on Xbox, I'll jump in anywhere with people. I'm just so excited to go back to one of my favorite games in Final Fantasy XIV. And that is going to do it for our show today. We hope you'll jump in and play with us next month for Final Fantasy XIV. And remember, please support Outside is Overrated on Patreon at patreon.com/OIO. For the Hobby Box, Joe Burns. For Dr. C, Casey Aline. For Dr. B, Brian Camille. And all of our friends at Premier Health, premierhealthmn.com. For John Monchad, not on the internet. We'll be back next month with more great content. Until then, stay inside, kids.